Welcome to the Home Court Talkback. My name is Dr. Elaine Rivers, and I am the Director of Community Relations at Fairleigh Dickinson University, and I'll be your moderator this evening. I am so honored to introduce to you filmmaker Erica Tanamachi. She is the director and producer of Home Court, as well as FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson University Knights women's head basketball coach. That is Stephanie Gaitley, and FDU Knights women's basketball forward junior, number 45, Lilly Parke. And so let's go ahead and jump in. Erica, I'd like to begin with you with a question about where is Ashley Chia today? What is she doing at
Uh,
Princeton Tigers?
Yeah, so Ashley is playing. She's the point guard at for playing for Princeton. And she's honestly living her best life. She's very happy.
Have you had any positive feedback from her in terms of the results of a 3.5 year journey and tracking her life?
Yeah, I mean, I think, she's still, she just turned 20. She's still young and processing sort of all that we did together. So I think this is definitely, she's in the journey still. I think one thing that makes this film unique is that you can watch the film and then it's over, but then you can turn on ESPN and see it continuing. So, because she's still, we kind of don't skip a beat with her. So, yeah, she's still actively, playing and growing and learning.
So, Erica, kudos to you. This is your first feature documentary,
Yeah.
and you have received many accolades for this home court film. And you purposefully covered a lot of different themes. As a matter of fact, you write the statement, "May this film inspire people not only to chase their dreams, but also to look deeper into their history, connecting with their parents and grandparents, to learn more about who they are and what their families endured to arrive where they are today." Let me ask you, do you feel like you've achieved what you set out to achieve?
Absolutely. I think the greatest feedback that we get are people who feel like they say like their inner child feels healed or they feel seen, or perhaps they didn't get that kind of connection from their parent or their mother. But hearing Lita express what Lita expressed made them realize something that they didn't necessarily see, didn't really understand. So as a child of, first generation immigrants. So yeah, I would say I think that's one of our biggest praises is having that sort of response of people say, I want to call my mom,
You've really touched upon a lot of themes that are so relevant today: racism, adversity, the resilience that's required to overcome much of what most of us are having to experience in today's world. So kudos to you also in that regard. You've really touched upon a lot of themes and subjects. What particular theme do you hope we take away from this screening?
Um, I mean, I think for me, truly, I think what you had said is that what I had kind of mentioned is that ability to look back and see where your family comes from. I think also, I think the theme of yeah, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, I think of knowing where we come from. And I think for myself, I will say, I think I was touched very deeply as a Jewish American and not actually knowing I was Jewish until I was an adult because of racism and anti-Semitism, that my grandparents just erased that history. Um, and so I think it's just important to know who you are. And also I think just that drive that Ashley has, I think that the theme of perseverance and continuing on is also, despite the adversity, despite all the things that she faces, I think is also a huge theme that I think people are really inspired by, especially young people. I mean, Ashley is a point guard. She has a stutter. She has, she's Asian American. She has all of these things writing against her as a basketball player. And I think seeing her still not only persevere, but thrive within this environment, due to the community and how the community wraps their arms around her, I think is also really important.
You were able to masterfully kind of weave together some of these themes and subjects that we all need to really think about. But I think in your introduction, your lasting thought is that we should all take away hope from this screening. And I'll tell you, I'm one, I can raise my hand. I can relate to a lot of themes that you've addressed here. But let's just switch to Coach Stephanie Gaitley. Coach Gaitley, you are in charge of, if you will, 15 players. Am I correct? How
I
how do
mean,
you, is it 15,
we
16?
have 16 this year, but
16 players. How do you achieve the balance in the relationship? Because when we see the relationship between Coach Chan and Ashley, it's really quite intimate. And that's a one-on-one. So how do you do that? How do you spread yourself among 16 players?
it's not easy. And I think the teams that have the most success are the coaches that understand the importance of developing relationships, whether it's all the kids in your rotation that are going to play or the kids at the end that don't play, because you have to make them all feel equally important. And that's not always easy either, because you equate playing time with, importance and being able to score or what have you. But I was super impressed by that relationship too, because I think the first thing that comes to my mind was trust. Like you can't say some of the things were said unless you trust. And so that comes with being honest. And so one of my biggest things is honesty. Like, I'm never going to lie to you. I'm going to be really honest with you. And that's what our relationship is going to be based out of. And that's how we're going to build our trust in each other. So it's a time consuming thing, aside from actually getting the kids ready to actually be on the court and produce from an X and O standpoint. There's so many things behind the scene in developing those relationships, which is a lot of time.
And it's not just between the player, but I'm sure you've had to interact with parents. You have to interact with professors because the education, of course, is primary. Would you say so? So it really represents quite a delicate balance that you have to establish very quickly. So Lilly, number 45,
Hello.
forward junior at Fairleigh Dickinson University. What's your take on what we've discussed so far?
I think about Coach Gaitley and how she kind of stretches herself to all 16 players. She does a good job at making sure that everyone feels equal and how much they're loved by her and how much she trusts everyone. Like, she'll say often, like, I see all of you as like my daughters. Um, but like, but that doesn't take away from who needs to be on the court. Like, she doesn't have like favorites or whatever. Like, um, yeah, she like, it's like a set standard for everyone, that whoever's on the court doesn't mean that she loves them more than other people that aren't necessarily playing as much. So that really builds a strong sense of trust between us and her.
Let's stay with that because you've used the term safe, and Ashley would state that she felt that basketball was her safe place, and that when she played she felt safe, and that's really where she chose to exist, sort of blocking out everything else. But more importantly, the family dynamics. And Lilly, if you can respond, you're a long way from home. You're from Auckland, New Zealand, and that's a long way from home. Tell me about the family dynamics that perhaps you experienced? And is there any, can you relate to what Ashley experienced?
Well, for me, growing up, my dad played basketball all his life, so he kind of taught me paved the way for me on playing basketball, and my love grew from him, I would say. I think I was pretty lucky with how close we were. My dad was my high school coach, so it was like we were very connected in that sense. My mum was an athlete too in other sports, so they kind of taught me a lot with basketball and sport in general and how to deal with things, adversity and whatnot, not making teams or not winning or whatever that may be. So kind of different to what she went through, but yeah.
How about being away from home?
Being away from home, I always say it's so busy, the life we live playing college basketball, you don't really have much time to miss home. But I think the most hardest parts is like after, like even the other day when we won the championship, like everyone's families are there after the game, so it's hard not getting to like share those special moments that you wish you could. But I think it's so lucky that we have FaceTime and everything these days. So just knowing that they're only one call away helps a lot.
Thank you for that. Erica, let me ask you another question. I know that you're an athlete as well. Am I correct? You participated in the Ironman competition?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you once again, you've been masterful in pulling together the interplay between a lot of different life situations. Can you really hone in on the mother-daughter dynamics that are reflected in home court between Ashley and her mom, Lita? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I think, as a filmmaker, I would say like, each film is, you see how films play out by who the director is. And a lot of my work focuses on mother-daughter relationships. So it's just interesting and, by design kind of that this ended up going towards a mother-daughter relationship. I didn't anticipate that would happen, but I definitely, yeah. So, when we first met Ashley, I think there was a little she was a little timid to sort of bring in the family. And after, a lot of conversation, it took us about a year for her to feel comfortable too, for us to even go into her home. But Lita and Bao were always just so open and generous with their time and stories. And we started to see kind of early on that there wasn't a lot of communicating between Lita and Ashley. I think there's just, typical teenage, mother-daughter dynamics and cultural dynamics, which kind of gets spoken about. And so we watched, it both develop. It was heartbreaking at times. And we kind of got to a point where we also wanted to sort of figure out how to wrap up the relationship for the film. And I think, and that's where it just so happened that Jamie asks the parents of the seniors to write these letters to the senior. So that's what Lita did. And that was kind of this beautiful opening and beautiful awakening of being able to hear sort of all of her thoughts about sort of everything that had happened in their lives and where she was at as a mother. And I think it took huge guts for Lita to share all of that and to say all of that in a public way. It just shows how much she loves and cares for Ashley. And I think for Ashley's response at the time, I think she just wasn't totally ready for it either. And now I think things feel differently. I know during that time, it was very important for her for it to not look like everything was tied up with a bow. And she expressed that to me. And so I wanted to include her sort of response in a way. But I know things are, obviously with time, as Jamie says, like, you don't really realize until you become a mother, sort of a lot of the sacrifices that your mother endured, or at least until you're older. that you can kind of look back and see. So yeah.
It was great how you were able to bring in Ashley's grandmother.
Yeah.
My takeaway is that she was a fierce, brave woman. I sincerely hope that, that really resonates with everyone who viewed Home Court. Lilly, going back to you mentioned your dad as being your inspiration. Can you relate to what Erica just stated about the mother-daughter relationship in any way? Were there any dynamics that you can speak about? You mentioned that your mom was an athlete as well.
Yeah. Only kind of relation I can think of it is I remember kind of some guilt moving away from home. Mum definitely didn't want me to move so far away from home. She wanted me to stay home, play another sport. But at the same time, I knew she would support me either way, and she still does. But that's kind of the only part that I can really relate to in that sense. Just kind of, yeah, it's hard to be away from the family and miss out on certain things.
Yeah, yeah. And Coach Stephanie, uh, you have three sons, so I'm sure the dynamic is a little bit different. But what's your take on this topic about just the parental relationship with the athlete?
Well, I think Lily hit it on the head. Like when I think about sacrifice, when I think about our kids, they were fortunate enough to be around the gym all the time, and two of them are coaching in the NBA now, and the third was involved with the NBA. So you can either use that and springboard into something, or you want to be completely away from it. But that whole relationship with her mom was very fascinating to me. I thought her mom had showed great bravery, admitting, that she wishes the relationship had been better. But, she's made so many sacrifices for Ashley to get to her dream, and I think Lil said it, that sometimes you don't work. I think you mentioned it, is you don't know until you get older and have your own children. Like I think about my mom all the time. She passed away a few years ago. Like, gosh, she loves us so much and the sacrifices she made for us. But yet I'm one of eight, and every one of us felt equally important. And that's not easy to do. So I could really relate to the mom of just like my heart felt for her, because she didn't want it to be too late to know that let Ash know that she loved her.
So you're one of eight in your
Yeah.
family. And I'm sure that you were playing sports at a time when, it wasn't widely accepted for women to play in basketball. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. When I was playing, it was very unusual to get a scholarship. And actually, myself and my two younger sisters, it's the first time in NCAA history that three sisters played in the same game. Two of us played at Villanova, and my youngest sister played here at Fairleigh Dickinson. And she was a three-time captain. She's now a mother of quadruplets and twins. Um, but it was something I tried to educate our young ladies as much as possible on the growth of the sport. I mean, even the opportunity, for Ashley to come over and go to a Princeton. I mean, that wouldn't have been during my time. That wouldn't have happened. I mean, I do an enormous amount of international recruiting, more than probably 10%, probably in the top 10% in the country of college coaches. But it's back then. I mean, we didn't get sneakers. We got uniforms that were beat up. We traveled on the same bus as another team. Like things are so completely different, that I think the opportunities that Ashley and this age group have is unbelievable. That there needs to be an education just for that, just for them to realize where the game has come. Because even when I'm looking at nowadays with places being sold out, and like we played at Iowa last year against Caitlin Clark, sold out. We played at UConn this year, sold out, and it's just an amazing thing for women's basketball. So this is a great time for Ashley and the kids of Lily's age.
That's fantastic. And they've got a great coach and mentor. You're in your 40th season, is it, Coach
Getting close
Stephanie?
to it. Don't remind me. I'm in my second.
Congratulations. So Erica, let me ask you a question because I wrote some notes down. Coach Chan stated with much passion that when she approached the headmaster at Flint Ridge Prep, that she really advocated for Ashley because she knew that by making the sacrifices for this young woman, that it would impact generations to come. That's another huge theme that you've been able to tackle in this film. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Coach Jay, upon her first meeting of Ashley, she described the setting, which I'm sure, Stephanie, you're familiar with, the where it was like eighth grade, just, she felt it almost felt like a meat market in a way of just watching the kids play. And she saw Ashley and she just saw the coaches. And her heart was like, I like someone who's looking out for her, because it can you there are, I think that one wonderful thing about this film is you're seeing a really solid, honest, trustworthy relationship between coach and player. And that unfortunately isn't always the case. And I think that's where I think this film is really important. And it's great to have this conversation to talk about that. But so I would say that from that moment, Jamie introduced herself, she shared about the program, and Ashley heard. And she just felt, once Ashley and her started having a connection, she just felt this desire, or like innate kind of motherly instinct, to protect her. And that sort of is what was kind of pushed her into then, Ashley applied to a bunch of different schools. And then, Jamie, of course, was they don't recruit at Flint Ridge. So it was more of just like, this is who we are. And that's what, and inspired Ashley to be a part of the program. So I know that once she got into the program, Jamie also continued to sort of be that guide for her and sort of protect her. And I think even to meeting me, we met Ashley through Jamie. And it was through because we came about this film because we were wanting to make a film about the Japanese American basketball leagues. And Jamie was a part of those leagues growing up. And so it was in our conversation, she talked about Ashley, who also grew up playing in the leagues. And that's sort of where the relationship went. But I would say she always felt, I think, I think there were moments where it was like she probably didn't sleep at night, just concerned, like, is this film going to be okay? And for Ashley, and, I promised in the beginning, and it's just how I am with film, like, if you don't, as a protagonist, it's very important for me that you feel that you are represented authentically, that, and that this film, will serve you. And so there was a lot of conversation and trust building in that in the end, they did all feel that way. So,
take a moment to talk a little bit more about the Japanese American Basketball League.
Yeah, absolutely. So my father-in-law actually played in the Nisei Athletic Union, which was the first Japanese American league formed post-incarceration. And then my husband and all of his cousins generationally after grew up playing in them. So all down in LA area, where there's about 14,000 players or more that participate in the leagues. It's a lot in California. They are in other areas too, but Northern and Southern California is a big hub. So yeah, my producer, Jen Lee Smith, her daughter had started playing in the leagues up here. And then she came to me and asked, if I was interested, if I knew anything about the leagues, and, if we should make a film about it. So that's kind of where we began our work. But they're incredible. It's an incredible space for, specifically just for Asian American athletes to be seen, to learn the sport, to grow as an athlete, and just culturally to be connected to community, I think is a huge asset.
And the league has an over 100-year history from what I gather from the film as well.
Yeah, so Japanese Americans were playing more competitively. And then once they all went into the incarceration camps, they started to play. It was, they continued to play there's all the different sports. And it was after the camps that the leagues became less competitive and more about community, because especially during that time when there was so much prejudice and hatred, and they weren't able to even play, they couldn't play, with other races. They had to find their own spaces, get their own gyms, and create their own leagues. So it was definitely, in the way we learned it, it was just it was like Japanese Americans sort of did this, and then soon after, one of the head guys who sort of kind of broker deals with clubs and whatever, then Korean Americans were like, oh, how do you do this? And then Chinese Americans, and then Filipino, and now I think there's more of a Asian American league, but yeah.
That's really profound, and I certainly learned quite a bit based on this presentation. Well, let me ask you, Lilly, coming from New Zealand, were there any, or are there any cultural issues that you had to overcome or face or get through in order to get where you are today?
I feel like I definitely haven't faced any direct sort of like racism or any type of things like that. I would say my freshman year was kind of tough. There were at Auburn, Montgomery, there were 4 of us that were from New Zealand that were on the team. So quite a lot. And I feel like that kind of caused quite a divide in our team. I felt like no one really wanted to get to know us, and like that we were just like the group of New Zealanders. Kind of just didn't really try to get to know us or interact with us much. So that was kind of difficult, especially in like a team, like you want to be close with your team and have chemistry with them. So that was probably a hard thing to overcome, and a big reason of why I wanted to transfer.
So Coach Stephanie, considering this is another dynamic that you probably had to balance out, the cultural differences, and of course, making sure that you gave all of your players, equitable attention. Tell us about that. How have you been able to do that?
I mean, I think the diversity is a really big part of it. I mean, like Lilly said, I mean, having 4 New Zealanders, I don't think you want too much of any specific thing, because it can put itself in that situation. So I think you have to be kind of aware that of trying to make it more like that it reflects what your university is, or it reflects what your community is. And and here at FDU, I mean, we have kids from overseas, we have Black, we have white, it's I think spreading it out, one, I think it helps the kids to learn more about each other, and how, we had a kid from Sweden on the team, and kids want to go visit her, and kids want to visit Lilly in New Zealand, and see another way of life. I mean, I've recruited over in Bosnia, I've recruited over in third world countries. I mean, I was shocked when I went to visit Fiji and work with their national teams. That's a third world country, and they have a lot of different cultural biases or different things that go on. So it was fascinating for me to learn a little bit about that background as I've gone through my kind of role as a basketball coach.
That's really quite interesting. Let's turn the corner here, because I think that it was made very clear at the onset that this film is about more than playing basketball, and that it's as it's described, a coming of age opportunity for Ashley Chia. But I think that it really talks about how a young person transforms from that of being a high school basketball player to that of becoming a young adult and professional in this world. And that's really quite something, Erica, how you were able to, to really intersect, this particular dynamic and how important it is for young athletes to not only adjust to the team element, but to really, be introspective in terms of looking at themselves as they've experienced playing ball and the level of competition that is reflected in the film. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you start, a documentary, it's like the first big hurdle is casting, right? Finding the characters that are going to sort of live the lives and that are interesting, right? So you find people, and kind of no matter what ends up happening, that they're going to be interesting to watch. So once we sort of settled with Jamie and Ashley and their family, then you start learning and you just follow and you start figuring out who they are and where their strengths are and their weaknesses and sort of how they're going to grow. And we knew from the onset that this was going to be coming of age, because just by design, right? She's growing up. We knew it would be throughout high school. We'd end her senior year. I kind of already knew the ending shot sort of in the very beginning. So what I didn't totally know was what was her growth until we started to film her and sort of see that, lack of maturity and, that you kind of see in the play and action. And that's what I knew would be her growth pattern. And that I knew that she would come into herself. I also had Jamie, in my ear telling me, this is what happens. She's going to grow up. Like this is what we work on every day. There was always an ongoing conversation they would have about this exact thing. And, you see Ashley later on when, she's going to play. I don't know if it's in this, if you see this cut, because I know you're watching a 60-minute cut, but she plays a game that she played, the Providence, the game that they lost earlier on. They play them again. And there's a moment when she looks at her hand and she says, Jamie's like, are you, because she was like, mouthing off again. And then she's like, I got it. I'm kind. I'm kind. She has written on her hand, I am kind. There's like that doesn't come overnight, right? That's years of counseling from coaches, conversation, and experience to get her to where at the end, she's crying to her team and sharing that, after a loss, she's crying about how proud she is of them. And that to me, I knew that moment would be there. I knew that, and it's so beautiful to see it. Like we were prepared for it as a production team, and it's pretty amazing to kind of watch someone walk through that.
That's very profound, absolutely. And as we're wrapping up our talk back, Lilly and Coach Stephanie, talk about the important life lessons that you are taking away from not only screening this film, but in terms of your involvement in sports as athletes, but also as Lilly, as an aspiring career person. Coach Stephanie, you're grooming your 16 members to go on to do great things in their lives. Talk about that.
I mean, I think from my end, Erica kind of hit it on the head. Like, I was amazed by Ashley's growth. And I think that's probably one of the most satisfying things for me as a coach is to see kids come in and say to and then when they leave, the change. Like, even when I've been, meeting with my captains once a week, and just to see how much they've grown in 1 year. Like, I've only been at FDU 2 years, but just in 1 year to see them grow. So that was one of the most impressive things to me about Ashley was, I'm like, man, this girl's wild child when I first saw her, and then to see and I'm thinking she's somebody that could, when she started off, being that little wild child, that could be kind of put off on your teammates. Like, hey, is she going to be accepted? And then I saw the transformation of her being loved by her teammates, which takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. And I give her so much credit for that. And it's maturing. It's giving and taking, more giving than she's taking. And so that's probably one of the most satisfying things. And I give her coach a lot of credit for that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of credit goes to the coach for that as well. I've seen many times where it's gone the other way, where it does end up that the team goes against someone who is, very outspoken or gets frustrated very easily. So I think it takes a lot for a coach to really pull the best out of a player like that and to transform them into someone that can be a real leader.
Well, thank you all. This has been a fantastic conversation. And I'll tell you, we could talk, I think, for the next hour or two and touch base on all the themes and topics that were approached here in this masterfully done film called Home Court. Thank you so much, Erica Tanamachi. You are superb. I look forward to what you have in store for us in the future. Coach Stephanie Gaitley, much success to you and your winning team. And Lilly, FDU Knights forward. Thank you for your intensity and your level of basketball expertise on the court. Thank you all for joining us on this Talkback.
Thank you
so much. It was an honor to be
And
here.
so, audience, I would encourage you to consider watching the full screening of the Home Court on PBS, the Public Broadcast System, on March 24th. Check your local listings for the time in your area. And also, keep in mind the upcoming Indie Lens screenings, and you can find out more information on teenecfilmfestival.org. And don't forget the Teaneck International Film Festival is celebrating its 20th anniversary, November 6th through the 13th. Please save the dates. More information will be forthcoming. And I thank you again for joining us on this talk back about Home Court. Good night.
Thank you.